Lawyers of Reddit, at what point, when working for a defendant, did you realize my client is a monster? Defended my client in a lawsuit who defrauded his business partners. Evidence was already overwhelming that my client was liable. Client made matters worse by fabricating evidence and presenting it in court. He got called out on it by his dad's attorney who had the same evidence. It tanked my client's case. My client continued lying to me despite the overwhelming evidence showing he fabricated evidence. He lost big. In addition to a large judgment, he got hit with several felonies for fabricating evidence. Also, the business partners my client screwed over were his dad and brother. A lot of years ago I used to work as a solicitor's representative. Cases go to Crown Court, barrister deals and I am there for paperwork, additional stuff with client etc. 70-something-year-old man had been in jail for 15 years for an assault on a child. Solicitor and barrister working on getting him released due to him getting clean reports from just about everyone. Guards took him out of jail to a dentist and as he entered the waiting room he saw 2 children and ran straight at them. Guards stopped him. 3 weeks later at court I was the one that sat him down in a room to explain that no, this isn't a hearing to release you. It is so you can be committed to a mental health secure facility for the rest of your life. He didn't take that well. I shed no tears. Well, that's absolutely terrifying. He was obviously ill, but I wonder what was going on in his brain to instantly try and attack them. Not the client but my managing partner. The client was a senile 90-year-old man. He wanted to sell land worth a little less than $1 billion to some businessmen. Suffice to say there were men who wanted to take advantage of the situation. One such person, to my dismay, was our managing partner. The partner wanted to insert a provision that would have effectively funneled about 60% of the proceeds solely to him. You could see how his eyes gleamed at the mere mention of money. The provision got lost in the revisions. I was doing the revisions. I'm no longer part of that scummy firm. My general psychology professor worked for the state of Arkansas assessing criminals to see if they would qualify as criminally insane. He told us a story one time about a guy who would get glass shards and hide them underneath his skin presumably to use at a more opportune time. He said his interview with a guy made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Ivan Millett, serial killer of backpackers in Australia, inspiration for Wolf Creek, was so dependent on inducing pain that when he couldn't hurt others, he turned to self-mutilation. He partially amputated a finger, used a plastic knife to saw through the bone, and put it in an envelope addressed to the High Court of Australia, all while maintaining his innocence. I'm on the other side, but I've got a defendant who went to prison for starving 3 adopted children to the point that they needed weeks of hospitalization, then got out of prison and married a guy with children so that she could start starving them. 2. Listening to her interview where she attempts to justify what she did to both sets of kids disturbed me more than any of the murder cases I've worked on. We had a client try and enforce a post-employment restraint against a 19-year-old receptionist after she quit and started working for a competitor. The reason? He wanted to make her life heck because she wouldn't sleep with him, a creepy 57-year-old man. Him trying to sleep with her was the reason she quit, and surprisingly he didn't take our advice to discontinue his claim and so we ended up sending him elsewhere. See, this right here shows the one thing many different type of buttholes share. They don't know when to fricking stop. He could have been done for sexual harassment and he got away with it, but he had to keep going, not once thinking he'd done something wrong. She tried to sell her baby. I found out during a hearing, in front of the judge. The people who try to sell babies surprise me. The people who try to buy babies confound me. Oh, I can share a good story. I had a teacher in high school who was a former lawyer. We always asked him why he gave up his practice to start teaching. He finally caved and explained that his last case was the defense of 3 people. Apparently there had been a 4th. It was 2 couples, who in the act of a drunken, drugged out orgy, decided to kill, partially eat, and dismember one of the women. I guess it seemed like a good idea at the time. As a lawyer, he said it was pretty open and shut, but he had to get his clients the best result possible, and he was exposed to all the horror details, the pictures, and their reasoning. My teacher had such a far off look when he explained it that we could see it really got to him. I listened to a 911 call where the victim's throat was slit while on the call by our client. I will never forget her gurgling and sounding like she was dying. Somehow she ultimately lived through this, saying, "He killed me, he killed me." That is not something I ever wish to hear. I'll go ahead and say it. When I practiced family law and criminal defense, I trusted and believed my criminal defense clients 100x more than my divorce custody clients. The worst monsters are the people who manipulate minor children for custody reasons. Frick them. Luckily I'm out of that area of law, hopefully for good. Had a divorce client, husband and father, who disowned his autistic son. Tried to argue that he should get all of his wife's retirement having not worked for 12 years. Contacted me during the height of Hurricane Sandy. He was in the Bronx and me in Manhattan, saying he wanted to hold his wife in contempt for not paying him that day while the storm slammed NYC. Told me I was making a huge mistake getting married. My wedding date was November 3rd, 4 days after Sandy, saying that I was going to be miserable and regret it. I could go on, but the worst was when, several months later, since his divorce was taking a long time, he sent death threat letters to myself and my wife saying that he had hired an executor to kill the two of us if his divorce wasn't finalized in 60 days. Called the police and they said he left his premises one day earlier. I heard nothing from him until February 2014 when he emailed me saying he needed a winter coat from his wife and could I help get it for him. Ironically, the divorce didn't have to be completed because he killed himself before the judge signed the judgment of divorce. Thoroughly uncool. My mom is a lawyer. This is the story about how she quit being a public defender. When you are a public defender you don't get to choose your cases. She got assigned a young man who, with the help of his friend, had gotten a kitten from a free to a good home ad in the paper. They then brought it home and gave it to their dog as a chew toy. I think they also filmed it. So yeah, she said she needed a shower after every meeting with him. Cancelled her PD contract after the case concluded. I work for an animal rescue charity and those free to a good home situations end badly more often than you like to think. Have heard lots of horror stories, especially with dogs who are given away. I'm a legal assistant. We got a client off of a murder charge. 2 weeks later she was caught with a similar weapon and situation, except this time the guy didn't die. I had a client who was accused of domestic violence. Essentially he threw his girlfriend out of a second-story window. Now he's got a terrible history but so do a lot of my clients and his attitude is a little entitled. Also typical. But he also knows the deal and wants a plea deal. So I'm not really prepared when he absolutely refuses the no jail offer from the state. Keep in mind there were like 5 witnesses. Why? Because they wanted him to pay for her medical bills. Okay, and butthole but whatever, not the worst. What did it was his counteroffer. I ain't paying that bitch's bills. Tell them I'll pay for the window. Prosecutor was not happy. A bit shocked to learn that by throwing someone out of a second-story window in front of 5 witnesses, it was possible for him to get off for no jail time. The first and last family law case was assigned to me as a first-year associate. My client broke his wife's jaw and said if they were home in Russia he would have killed her because he could pay his way out of prison there. When this person, an executive, said she was firing any employee who had a serious illness or injury while promoting fundraisers at a local church for cancer sufferers, no less, in part because employees, thinking she'd be sympathetic, would reveal their confidential health info to her. Criminal defense lawyer. I can name a few instances where I was just absolutely disgusted with my client. Caveat: these are mostly years ago when I was taking just any old case. I most practice white collar and federal now. 1. I won a DUI case because the government messed up on something right before trial was to begin. My client gives me a hug and completely reeks of alcohol. He has driven to court. I took his keys and called his mother. 2. I represented a woman for a grand theft charge. Left her in my office to get some things copied before she left. After she left, I realized my sunglasses and car keys were stolen. I tracked her down in the lobby and told her I was not going to represent her anymore and I would call the police if she didn't empty her pockets in front of me and give me my things. 3. I had a client who was released after 25 years in prison for murder and then the same day he beats up his prospective new landlord. He ended up getting another 10 years. He was unrepentant and laughed about how he hit the guy so hard his eyeball popped out. I thought, this guy deserves to be in prison. took the case to trial anyway and, shocker, lost and he got 10, the max. 4. Client who pretended to be a doctor so he could sell steroids. According to the Gov, he had numerous clients who were made to believe that his steroids would cure their cancer. They paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars and some of them died. I just thought that was pure evil. When I had to go to the US Attorney's office to view the evidence in his case, there they were, the hundreds of images of child pee he had traded, the close-up images of his baby's genitals that he had taken and sent around the internet, the pictures of his neighbor's daughters playing in their kiddie pool. Realized he just could not help himself. But he also never once claimed responsibility or showed remorse, so I don't feel too badly for him. Don't read this unless you have a strong stomach. Attorney's wife here. I used to help him file away evidence and reports. Came across a file with video. Curiosity got the better of me, especially when told me not to watch it. File gives this story. Woman then was at boyfriend's trailer out in middle of nowhere. Got pee off at boyfriend, so smacked him in the head with a metal bat and went on her merry way home. But boyfriend is apparently not a pleasant person and nobody really misses him or looks for him. He is fired from work in absentia. On day 7 boyfriend's neighbor finally stops by, hears horse screaming and calls police. That's where the video came from. Day 7. One of the cops was wearing a camera on his uniform. It shows him and his partner going through the house, finding dog poop all over the floor. Boyfriend's 2 Rottweilers, who were also in the house, went without food for about 6 days before they started eating bits and pieces of him. The camera shows the moment the cop found the body on its side, rolled it over, and he's blinking, eyes open, with most of his face gone. The woman didn't even bother to let THR dang dogs out before she left. I do not help file cases anymore. OMG. This should be one of the top comments. Dismembering a body after it's already dead is one thing. Being eaten alive with no one to check on you, that is some crap I never thought of. Not a lawyer, but work for a law firm as an investigator. One of our clients stabbed an ex-lover multiple times over $100. Perp then ran out of the house all bloody. Neighbor and her teenage daughter see him covered in blood and rush inside to see if they can help while they call 911. Victim is still alive. On the 911 call the daughter made, you can hear the mom singing Amazing Grace while she tried to stop the bleeding. You can also hear the victim, with a stab wound in her neck, gurgling on blood while she tries to sing along. The EMTs arrived in under 3 minutes, but it took the police 19 minutes from the call to show up to clear the scene for them. She lived for 17 minutes. I saw the photos of the scene with the body still in place. It looked like a scene straight from Dexter. Late to the party but anyways, my first internship in law school was at a matrimonial law firm in a very wealthy area. Think millionaires and billionaires getting divorced. One of the first cases I worked on involved the parents of a victim of a high-profile school shooting. The parents were divorced and had been prior to the death of the child, and were now battling over who would get the victim's compensation fund money and the funds they received from a fundraiser they set up themselves on a GoFundMe type site. These were incredibly wealthy people fighting over what was literal chump change to them and asking the public to donate to them as if they needed it. They were so clearly exploiting the death of their child for money and to pee off the other parent. It was honestly one of the most disturbing things I have encountered, ever. Lifelong criminal defense lawyer here. To be completely honest, it's not about the offense but about the person. I've had people accused of murder that I really kind of liked and thought well of. I've had people accused of shoplifting who have given me the heebie-jeebies and seemed like psychopaths. Speaking from purely a criminal standpoint, having a client who is a monster doesn't matter in terms of your duty to them, but it does make the job less pleasant. My worst clients have been people who are comfortable scamming others of their money. Had a client charged with bestiality with his pet goat. Pictures of his undies full of goat hair and his bed littered with goat poo was something the like I have never seen in my career. When after the charges were dismissed, he asked me for help getting the goat back. SMH. Euthanasia stole my twist. Murder, robbery, and most crimes involve regular people who did or may have done something stupid due to alcohol or situations. But the client you keep an eye out are the ones charged with fraud and the like. Liars, cheats and all around shady people generally speaking. Even the gangs operate on a code of conduct. An old-fashioned warlike code of conduct. Honor and courage are important to them even though they commit crimes. 22 years threatened twice, so not that bad. The real danger? Not in criminal law, it's family law. That's where people get really heated. It's personal. Prosecutor here. Most of us in this profession have the utmost respect for those on the other side of the aisle. Most people really don't know or understand the really fricked up crap that we have to witness and deal with on a daily basis. There's a reason attorneys have the highest percentage of alcoholics by profession. You have been visited by the sleeping Italian. Comment sleep tight Lil Guido for nice spaghetti and meatball dreams all night. If you comment keep fighting, Papa. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.